Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Sir David Attenborough and Anthony Geffen. Hello.
Hi.
Hello down there. Thank you, Mother. Now, David, I know you've been a huge fan of the Natural History Museum for an awfully long time. Can you tell us a little bit about how this collaboration with them came about and a little bit about your love for that particular museum?
Well, we've been working, I mean, it's perfectly true. As a kid, and I dare say lots of people here, went to the Natural History Museum, and it was a place of wonders. I mean, you suddenly saw the skeleton of a dinosaur. Thrilling. And not only that, but you also saw tens of thousands of wonderful butterflies and birds and so on. So it was a great thrill. And we've worked a bit with the Natural History Museum for 3D, because the first 3D thing we did was about pterosaurs, pterodactyls, flying reptiles. And we are sort of good pals with the Natural History Museum. And then last January, just about a year ago, less than a year ago, the boss of Sky was very pleased with the flying reptiles that we did a year ago, and he said, I want another one for this Christmas. He left it a bit late, if you're actually asking me, you know, because 3D is quite a lengthy business. And he also said the Natural History Museum was very keen to do something which could lead to an app, and varied apps to gather in new audiences for their museum. And we came up with this idea of, I mean, not a very original idea, but an idea that at night on Christmas, close to Christmas, you know, all these things would come alive. And that's how it happened. But it meant, I mean, it's quite tedious filming. I mean, the only time when you can really film the Natural History Museum in the public galleries, of course, is when the museum is shut. So it meant that I mean, I wrote the script quite quickly because it's a very easy script to write, really. But it meant that once we got the script approved, we had to go and shoot all the bits that I'm appearing in the museum bits, within 15 days, but you had to do it every night. I mean, we got there at 7 o'clock in the evening, and we had breakfast at about 11 o'clock, and lunch at about 2 o'clock in the morning, and left at 7 o'clock in the morning to go home to bed.
I love you still call it breakfast at 7 o'clock in the evening.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, there can't be many things that you do for the first time in your career after the illustrious career you've had, but in this film, as we saw a clip there, you did a bit of acting. How was that?
Yeah, well, I mean...
he was quite good, wasn't he?
Well, I tell you, I mean, as a matter of fact, you feel a right twit. Let's be honest. I mean, you really do, because you're supposed to be reacting, something isn't there. I mean, it's bad enough. I mean, I wouldn't mind doing the acting bit of glorious Hollywood beauty, you know, I can see myself doing that.
Have a word with Sky next time.
But doing it with a dinosaur is difficult. And also, you don't actually have anything there at all. But what you do have is a man with a long pole and a red ball on the end of it. And the red ball is supposed to be the head of this thing you're looking at. So he wanders around being instructed as to where to go. And I had to sort of look there and say, you know, all that stuff. And as I say, I looked a real twit. Not quite, a little bit less of a twit when they finally put the CGI in and you saw the animal. But at the time, it's not my game, really.
Anthony, how much of a twit do you think he looked?
I think David was actually fantastic. I mean, to be the only person literally in the film and to have to keep coming out and doing takes into air, you know, often there wasn't even a puppet or there wasn't any eyeline. It's pretty hard, actually, over and over again. And you know, we had spent hours setting up that shot, so David knew he had to get it done quickly. I think it's pretty hard, actually. And you know, there's a fine line when you're acting into nothing, as we found out, you know, getting it right. And I think, you know, I think the film is testament to that. And not only that, the critics have loved it. So, you know.
I tell you what, one of the problems it really was for me is that, okay, viewers, I spend my lifetime looking at animals, and if I said it happened, people thought it was true. They could believe me, and it was true. I mean, if I see a polar bear, I see a polar bear. So there's no acting in that. And I was very keen that people should see in natural history programs that I wasn't an actor. So how are you going to mix it suddenly with CGIs, with things that aren't there? And that was one of the reasons why a year ago, when we made a thing about pterosaurs, we deliberately left the skeletons in, the skeletons which moved around, so that people knew that, you know, the whole thing was a clever gimmick, really, but a gimmick with a reason. But so that once they understand and they became party to the agreement that, okay, this is got a game in it, we kind of pretend, then you're okay. But that was quite an important thing to do. And actually, the paradox is that the skeletons moving and animated, is particularly exciting. I mean, it really is a very interesting thing to see, almost more interesting looking at the animal itself. I mean, because you see the way the joints move and so on. So it's quite thrilling, and we kept it and we exploited it quite a lot in this film.
And what amazed me was that, I mean, we've all seen CGI. We started with before Jurassic Park, but we've seen the progression of it. The level of detail and something. I think we've got a clip of a dodo here that we can show.
Well, I'll let you into a secret, actually.
Don't tell them.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed to me that on the pterosaur film, that we reached that the CGI animations they produced was a new level. I mean, the animals are totally believable. They behaved in a way which was both natural and, as it were, unpredictable. I mean, so you really felt they were real things. And there's a team which Anthony's outfit have within Atlantic Productions, Colossus Productions, called Zoo. And I would go and see all these people beavering away at computers, you know, working out what these things should be. And I started talking to the boss man, who was a very, very quiet and reserved man. I kept saying, very good, wonderful. And he was saying, oh, thank you very much, thank you very much. And eventually, after being working together for some months, only then did I discover from him that actually he was a fossil expert. He went to university, he studied zoology, and he studied fossils, and his heart was absolutely in it. And that's why that's those things. His name is James Prosser. He'd hate me for telling you that, because he's the modest most man in the business. But he is fantastic. He's a near genius.
But it sounds like you work with a huge cast of people on this.
Well, if you're working on CGIs, I mean, there are 10 people in that room there, but
there are lots of other people.
But of course, with communications these days, they sometimes working away just on the feathers, and then overnight you will send it to the world expert who's in New Zealand. And when you come in the morning, the bloke will say, well, I think they lay a little flatter or whatever, and you are modified it accordingly. So if you had to ask how many people worked on that, I would find it extremely difficult to get an answer, but it's certainly in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. You know, it's a lot of people and a lot of work.
And all around the world, and it's right. A global production.
Yeah, James was very clever. What he realised is that there are only, with the photo resolution we wanted, this is 4K, right on the cutting edge of technology, and to get that resolution, there are only a handful of people in each area with skin textures, with feather textures, who can get it right. So we had to go and find and work with the very best people. Fido, Milk, I mean, the best companies around the world.
You mentioned guys from the film Gravity came and worked with you for a little while, and then
they were working with us before they worked on Gravity.
We loaned
them.
They were asked before they were there.
We loaned them, didn't we, Dave?
Yeah, we said they could take time off, do a bit of Gravity, you know.
Go to the Oscars, enjoy yourself.
But it's true. I mean, Chris Parks. Actually, I worked with Chris Parks' father. Chris Parks' father is an optical genius, a scientist who worked on microscopic animals in a series I made in 1980, so a long time ago. And he was the boss man who did all the microscopic work of animals. And Chris is his son. And I said, don't repeat this, but I said to Chris, oh, it's lovely to meet you. How's your father? And he said, oh, he's fine. And I said, is he still working? And he said, well, you know, he's in his 80s. You know, we give him little things to play with, just to make it like. And I said, Christopher, I am 87. Yes.
That's him told. There's another clip we've got of one of my favourite exhibits at the museum of Dippy, getting her skin I don't know what you get skin, but getting a skin put on, perhaps.
It's the moment it comes alive, really.
And this, I think, shows brilliantly the real level of kind of complexity that CGI got to. I want one of those for Christmas, I think, next year. Just as a quick straw poll, how many people watched Alive? Hands?
Oh, quite a lot.
Okay. I thought it'd be more. How did you choose which animals you were going to portray in here?
Well, the problem once you've got the idea is if you're not very careful, it's going to be very repetitive. You know, you see a fossil there and say, oh, we're going to bring it alive, and it becomes alive and it hops down. That's the end of that story. And then you're going to do it again and again. So you had to pick things that there was a reason for them coming to alive, either that it was a forgery, or they got the thing wrong, or that there was an interpretation, or new interpretations, or something. And each time you tried to make it come alive in a different way. So sometimes you make it, as you do with the mower, smashing the glass case in order to get out. Sometimes the animals did interesting things. We only really knew recently that the huge giant sloth, the extinct giant sloth, ground sloth, actually was a digger, and we got him digging up half the museum in animation. Yeah.
Anthony, tell us a bit about the technical challenges of producing something like this.
Well, in a funny sort of way, it would have been a lot easier had we just been making a film where we had imaginary creatures, because there's no benchmark. But you know, working with David Attenborough, you've got to get it right, and David wanted the creatures to be right. So the first complexity was working with the museum, and they were fantastic, and their curators, with the CGI team, with David, to get each creature, because the magic of this, I think, is that the real creatures are more interesting than any you could ever make up. And you know, those are the questions in the film that David wants to find out about. So that was a big challenge. Real creatures, real movement is very, very hard. So that's just the CGI side, which is hard. And we were trying to do a lot of things. You know, the reason we do 3D is to really create something which is different, which is innovative, which is pushing the bounds. And we didn't have the technology when we started this film to finish it. I never like to tell David that, but the technology wasn't there. So you know, as usual, we finished about 2 hours before we put it out, and we're still tinkering with it. But that's the first step. The second area is the technology. I mean, David picked a fantastic place, a museum where the 3D looks very, very good. But actually, the technical stuff we were trying to do, you have to get each creature, even though it's not there, to be in exactly the right position. Because if it's not, the sequence won't work. If David's reactions aren't right and his eye line isn't right, so there's a lot of complexities. 3D is already complex with lots of people still and heavy cameras, but actually to get every detail right, because you would know if it wasn't right, was a big, big challenge for the team. And you know, we had a huge team, as David knows. We literally took over the museum every night. But it couldn't have been done without the collaboration. The museum were amazing throughout. I mean, they, you know, very accommodating, and also their experts were absolutely critical. You know, and what I like about this film is these creatures as real. I think David would agree, as real as you're going to get for a long time.
Now, you mentioned that at the start that the app was part and parcel of the film. It was, you know, it came alongside. So let's talk a little bit about the app. What's the thinking behind it? What were you trying to achieve by producing this?
Well, the business of bringing an animal to life, a dinosaur to life, means that you have to produce a huge volume of data in which every little square centimetre is plotted mathematically. So you ended up with this great thing. But that's where the cost lies, and that's a huge amount of cost. But once you've got that, then you can use it in all kinds of different ways. You can use it by putting the skin on, you can make it run, you can make it jump up and down, and you could make it into an app. And so that data is there. If you said to the museum now, just go and make data on dodos and dinosaurs and whatever, they would say, and quite rightly, it'll cost a mint. But in fact, because we made a film first, and that data is already there, it means you can take it, transplant it, and then use it to produce an app, on the app, a CGI image of a dinosaur, which you can turn up and upside down, you can make revolve, you can look at its skeleton and so on. And the museum is always on the lookout of finding new ways of engaging its audience. And the museum have been talking about getting an app in some way that would exploit some of the treasures and display some of the treasures in a completely new way. And I think they're probably first in the world. I don't know, Anthony may know about
I think of this kind, yes. I mean, there are other people who have attempted apps, but I think this is a very rich, very interactive app. And so it is of its kind, the first.
Well, let's have a look at it. I think we can sample a little bit of it here. So it's quite an immersive experience. You get to play around with things and move them around and really kind of get in amongst it.
What we wanted, we talked a lot about the app, is we wanted it to be very different. There's no point in just producing elements of the same thing all over again. So we had a different team, and they were working, as David says, with all our rich assets. But what I think this is, and this is exciting, it's you, the user, who gets, in a way, to become the David Attenborough in the film here. You can choose which creature, how to skin it, how to put it back to life, how to learn about it. And you can be 2 or you can be 103. It doesn't make any difference. And I think you can explore it at home, anywhere in the world. But there's another element to the app where you can actually go into the museum and start to interact with the exhibits. And I think, that's very exciting. It's a different digital journey. But it couldn't have come about had we not done the film. So that the two are sort of locked together. And I think they'll be feeding from the film back to the app and the app to the film. But I also think, hopefully, hundreds of thousands, if not eventually millions of kids, hopefully, because it's a very well-populated museum, will go on journeys and learn things that they wouldn't have learnt otherwise.
Because you can do stuff, if you have the app, when you go into the museum, it interacts with some of the exhibits.
You can go to positions where you effectively interact. I mean, we haven't lined it all up because there's still problems, as you know, with bandwidth and different devices and different phones. But you can go effectively to that exhibit. And there are treats we've put, as it were, around the museum where you can find out and get certain things that you learn about the museum on top of that. And I think this is the beginning of the journey, to be honest with you. I think this is stage 1 of the app. If the app works, I'd love to enrich it, because there's a lot more we could put in the app.
And I think you mentioned also that the film might go to cinemas, and it becomes this global thing in the way that some of the other ones have, and it's been seen.
I hope so. I mean, Flying Monsters, which David mentioned, started 3D and 2D on television, then it went to cinema, then it's gone to IMAX around the world. It's played in 60 to, I don't know, it's going to have played in 100 countries by the end of this year. It's going to last 10 years. We love that. I think we love the idea that it's both on television, it's an app, and for years and years people can go and learn about it in an IMAX, or see it in an IMAX theatre. And we shoot them. This is another complexity, really, which we've given ourselves. We shoot them as though we have to shoot them for the IMAX. So everything is at the highest possible resolution. That's a huge challenge. If we were just shooting it for television, it'd be a lot easier. But it's not what we want to do. These are very special projects, and we want them to be explored on different digital formats.
I think it's really interesting that a TV program now is just the gateway to the experience. Obviously you used to get TV, we still do get TV programs which are TV programs, or films which are films. But this seems to be taking it into a slightly different direction, whereas you watch the film, then you get the app, then you buy the T-shirt, then you do that, and it carries on for years and years. And
that's because the audience has broken up. I mean, I started television, there was only one television network in the country, and only one television network in Western Europe, in point of fact, just BBC, and that was live. Well, the situation could hardly be more different now, and what is produced for television by television networks is now available, as everybody here will know better than me, in a multitude of different ways. You can look at it on, when you're on an aeroplane, you can look at it on an iPad, you can look at it on your phone, you can dial it up, you can get all kinds of ways. iPlayer and the BBC repetition. So the audience is no longer sitting in front of armchairs in a family and saying, oh yeah, look at that television. You're doing it how you want to do it, where you want to do it, and when you want to do it. And the job of program makers is to make that possible.
Although I'd say this is the first one we've done, David, where we've probably thought through all the digital formats more clearly from the beginning than we have with the others. I mean, because if we know, as David rightly says, it's going to happen, let's create unique elements of it for each format. Otherwise, you're just chucking one thing from one format onto the next.
Now, I have a funny feeling that we might have some questions. So we're going to wrap up here and throw it open to the rest of you. Has anyone got a question for David or Anthony? Quite a quick response in the front row. I think we're going to have some mics coming around. Bear with me.
What do you think is the most encouraging thing about the way we humans are treating the world right now? And one more thing at the end. If this, if we were filming a documentary right here, right now, how would you give a commentary of what's happening in this room?
Well, I don't know the answer to any of those questions. As to how... The world's in trouble. I mean, it's no good me trying to pretend that everything's okay. It's not, and it would be dishonest to say that it is. Is the world going to get worse? It depends how you look at it. I mean, for example, we are concerned about global warming. We may think that, and climate change, and we may think that many of the disasters that have been happening right now as a result of it could be, couldn't be. But if it all gets warmer, then the south of England could become like the North Africa. On the other hand, it could be also that the ice in the Arctic melts, and then suddenly it's going to be possible to do trade around the Northwest Passage through the north to Europe from America. That could be good. It's not everything is disaster, but nonetheless, by and large, things are going to be quite tough over the next 100 years. And we are going to lose some animals, there's no doubt about that. Evolution doesn't say works fast enough to replace the ones that we're losing. So that there are animals that are being filmed now that you wouldn't be able to film in another 50 years' time. So it's a mixed picture. And all you've got to do is to say, well, this is our place, and we've got to do the best we can. We can't give up on it. We can't say it doesn't matter. You just have to flog on whenever you can, find hope, make it a little bit better, that you do. But that's all.
Anybody else? There's a young lady behind the camera there.
Hello, I'm Scottish. You might not understand what I'm saying. Firstly, I am completely privileged to be able to speak to you right now, and thank you for giving me a magical 28 years of life on a Sunday afternoon. It's been great having you. My question is, if you could come back reincarnated as any animal, what would it be?
A sloth. Hanging upside down in a tree, nibbling a bit here and there, going back to sleep. Not bad.
Very nice. Anyone over here? Lady,
I could give you a spicier answer, actually, come to think of it.
hold on. Go on, let's have the spicy answer.
The sexual lives of some animals beggar belief.
This can be another one of those secrets. Who are you talking about? Or what are you talking about? Oh. Well. His lips are sealed. Where was my friend over here? There she is. Go on then.
I'd just really like to know actually what you'll next be working on and what we can look forward to in terms of your next production.
Well, I leave on Saturday for the Kalahari Desert. I'll be there for a week or so, filming meerkats, doing some interesting things, I think. And then I go to Borneo with Anthony. You coming? Yeah. Well, he's the boss of the outfit. He doesn't always have to come, but he does. And with a team from Atlantic, and we're making another 3D series, but about the evolution of flight, how flight was developed. An obvious reason, an obvious suitable thing for 3D, because things not just exploiting 2 dimensions tied to the ground, but can suddenly take off and fly into the screen or out of the screen or wherever you want them. So we're dealing with insects, and then we go on to pterodactyls, pterosaurs, which are flying reptiles. From reptiles we go to birds, and from birds we go to bats. And that starts, we've already shot a bit of stuff, amazing stuff actually, in Rome, where there are huge assemblies of starlings, hundreds of thousands of them, and they all settle in the trees. And the crew I've been working with very imaginatively have put 3D cameras in the trees. So you see all these birds, these starlings, coming in and like a pell-mell and just falling onto the tree and falling up on line. Terrific stuff. So that's what we've started doing. But we go to Borneo in 3 or 4 weeks, and we'll be getting a lot more of the really fascinating things that fly.
Well, there's a question actually I want to ask, so I'll abuse my position. Why is it called a murmuration of starlings?
Somebody makes it up. There are, I'm convinced it's true. There are people who collect things, and there are some people who just, all they want to do is to imagine that there are collective nouns for something. And I'm sure there's somebody somewhere inventing these sort of...
What's the collective noun for David Attenborough fans then? No, never mind. So that was, in the film, there is a saber-toothed cat with enormous great teeth, and he's got the most ridiculous name. He's called...
Smilodon?
Yeah, who invented that?
Well, it's quite a smile.
Terrifying. Who else? Lady over there in the back row.
Hello. I was just wondering, of all the animals that you bring to life in the programme, which is your favourite and why?
In the programme, my favourite, if I can extend it a bit, my favourite fossil animal that we brought to life was the one that we brought about life a year ago, which was the pterosaur, which was the biggest flying thing that ever took to the ground. A wingspan 40 feet across, 10, 11, 12 metres across, a vast thing. And we know it existed. The bones we've got, it's not just one example, we've got complete skeletons of a whole range of them. These immense monsters were flying above the dinosaurs. Imagine that. And we have no idea, actually we pretend we have, but we really have no idea how the damn things got into the air. With a wingspan that out, you can't flap. So how do you do it? I mean, you watch a pigeon get into the air, and the pigeon works like mad to get up. If you watch a swan getting into the air, a big thing, has to run along the lake, the surface of the lake, getting up ground speed, and then spreads its wings and off it goes. But 30 foot, 40 wingspan, how did it fly? I don't know. And that's really my favourite prehistoric animal to bring back to life.
Good evening. You've sort of answered my question already, but if you could...
I'll give you a different answer.
If you could fly out anywhere, to any part of the world again tomorrow, and stay there for a month, where would you go?
Well, I mean, I'll take it literally. You really mean a month. I would probably go to Northern Australia, Northern Queensland. It's just a great place. You've got wonderful rainforest, unique rainforest. You've got the birds of paradise in it. You've got bowerbirds. You've got tree kangaroos, would you believe, on the one hand, and then you go down and there's a barrier reef down in the river and down in the sea, which is fantastic. I mean, the richness of the barrier reef is simply unbelievable. And you've got lovely people. I mean, the Australians are great people, and the food is something which you're going to like. Not necessarily, I won't say exactly where it was that I spent the month, when hating every mouthful that I put in that I chewed. But it's not like that in Australia. You get good food in Australia, and there's wine, and I don't know why I'm staying here.
We thought you were all about the natural history, but actually it's just a big party you're after, isn't it? Is there an animal that you've not seen that you want to?
There are lots of things I haven't seen. Yeah, there's a fabulous hummingbird up in the high Andes in Ecuador that has the most extraordinary displays. It's got long quills that come out of its tail, each with a little pennant on the end. And the female sits on the branch and says, "Okay, Buster, see what you can do." You see, and Buster has to get up, and then he's got to hover in front of the female, only about 5 or 6 inches from it, and then while he's stationed in the air, which takes a lot of flapping, he then has to erect these quills and cross them over his head while he's sitting there, and it takes a lot of energy, and you can see him. He said, okay, oh, blimey, and has to go and perch, and then he sits there panting for a bit, and she takes no notice at all, and so he tries again. But it's a great bird. Great bird. Love to see it.
Anyone else?
Sorry, this is a little slightly less exciting question, but more about the app, actually, because I've been looking at your app while you've been talking, and it's a really beautiful app, and the images are fantastic and things. And so you've got £3.60 of my money, etc. already, which is good. But a quick question is, I noticed how the way you've designed it from the architecture point of view, the way that you're exposing the video clips, if you sort of put in a key or a little game to find out the symbols around that, just sort of understanding the thinking behind that. Is that trying to engage kids in terms of trying to do it before you expose the video? What's the...
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think, the team that designed this, who work at Atlantic and outside Atlantic and Colossus, are trying to find different ways of bringing in different audiences, and one of the ways is searching for things and not having everything just absolutely spelt out. Sometimes worries me from the slightly older school whether you're going to find X or you're going to find Y, but that's the way we've designed it, and I think it's going to work. And kids are an important part of this app. They really are, to get them engaged in the museum and the creatures in the museum.
That's an interesting question, isn't it? Where you go from education to entertainment, and what's more important, and how you try and get the balance between the two.
I don't believe there's a difference between the two. I mean, if it's good entertainment, it's educational. If it's good education, it's entertaining. I mean, it really is true. I mean, I think you'd learn more by watching Porridge about male delinquency or one or another than you would read by reading an awful lot of textbooks of criminology. And similarly, if you don't make a natural history program which has real pull in it and real excitement in it, then people aren't going to take on board the information anyway. So the two things come together if they're good of their kind. Entertainment should be educational. Educational programs should be entertaining.
And I think it's also about storytelling, isn't it, David? You know, you tell a good story and you take the audience with you, and you're doing everything at the same time. And that's what we try to do. I mean, some people might think, gosh, it's entertainment, you know, alive, but actually, there's lots of layers of lots of things going on in the film.
I mean, obviously you've achieved an incredible amount over the last 87 years. Is there anything else that you'd like to do that you've got yet to sort of achieve in life?
No, I mean we've only just started on 3D. You know, I mean we've been at it for how long? 2 or 3 years? 4 years. But 4 years is nothing. We're still learning about it, and we're still working out how really to use it and when to use it. 3D is not just like a paint that you paint over the whole thing. It's very has different effects in different places and different times, and we're still working at it. We're still learning it. I'm not an advocate for thinking that everything should be in 3D. No, I don't particularly want to see a newsreader in 3D. Okay, it might be, but so what? But there are subjects which are really illuminated by 3D, and we're doing one of them.
I think the other thing is, you know, 3D at the moment might not appear, you know, people have bought 3D television, there isn't a lot of content, but actually we've been lucky enough, I suppose, because we're at one of the hubs of 3D to get shown the things that are coming. And glasses-free television is not that far away, where you just change channel with no glasses. And we've seen a tablet recently, which we were just blown away by. I mean, you literally, you know, because you can distance it at your own comfort level, you are immersed in a 3D world, and those will be arriving this year. So this world of 3D is about to come, and what we're excited about is we've made these hopefully on the highest resolution so that they can really show people what you can do with 3D. But as David says, we're just beginning this journey, and we've come, I think, quite a long way. There's a long way to go, and on the new production, Conquest of the Skies, you know, we're developing new technology so that we can now fly unmanned flying vehicles off the ground with 3D equipment and look at things in a way that we've never seen before, let alone 2D, but in 3D. So it pushes us, and it's very exciting to innovate.
Can I have a question? Have you told the insurance company you're going to put a 3D camera on this thing that's unmanned and going to fly through the forest?
We're going to talk about that afterwards, David. We're not going to have you under it.
There's a lady there.
My parents both worked for the BBC Natural History Unit in Bristol for a long time. And my dad would always come home from filming trips and things with sort of all sorts of stories. Some that I thought most of them were probably true. Others I thought maybe they were fabricated. But I ever wondered, in your sort of travels around the world, have you ever had a moment where you were like, well, this is a bit dangerous or something went wrong? Because of the sort of things that would happen on camera trips, you never felt like there was anything going wrong? Or
all the time.
Were there any in particular?
No, not major catastrophes, but in fact, you know, what we do now is to make these making of programs which show you all the bits that go wrong. And there are some bits that I find actually now, looking at them, thank goodness I wasn't involved, because they look catastrophic. I mean, there's a shot of a chap in a terrible hot air balloon going straight into a tree, into a baobab tree, which makes my heart leave my chest. But by and large, what goes wrong is not the things that happen, it's the things that don't happen. I mean, what goes wrong is that you sit there and nothing happens. You know, a bird just sits on the nest and looks at you, and you know, for God's sake, do something. But so there aren't dramatic catastrophes.
But I'll let you into a big secret. David does do, rather like in the Bond movies, his own stunts. And in Flying Monsters, which is the film David was referring to with the giant pterosaurs, there's a moment where David wrote into the script that he was going to hang glide 2,000 feet above Lyme Regis in a hang glider and then have a pterosaur flying over the top of it. And so this was going to be in a very elaborate and complicated sequence until we rang the insurance company. And they said, there is no way we are going to insure a national treasure above Lyme Regis hanging from... Anyway, it was all... We thought very hard about it, and David still did it in a fairly dangerous, I think, dangerous way, which is to do it in a hang glide. I mean, to do it in a glider. So anyway, David, you know, all the stunts you'll see in the films are always carried out by David, just like Daniel Craig.
He actually abseiled down the side of the building to get here. Over here, right.
Hi. I just wanted to ask if you had a bucket list.
Of things I want to do.
Yeah, that you haven't
before
done
I
yet.
turn up my toe. No, I've crossed most of them off, to be honest. I mean, you know, I can't. I thought that you would have to stop going gallivanting around the world when I was in perhaps reached 60. Well, that was 27 years ago, and I've just been fantastically lucky. I mean, I've got friends, I've got relations who are my age who can't move, you know, and they simply can't get out of their wheelchairs. So it's not virtue, it's not exercise, it's not anything, it's just luck. And that I am still around here, still doing it, still going out to the Kalahari, still going off to Borneo, which I love. I love all those things. And so I've done all the big ones that I wanted to do if I would have had a bucket list. I have actually ticked off. But I'll tell you another secret. You can dive on the Barrier Reef more than once and be thrilled. I tell you, every time you do it, it's a huge, huge thrill.
There was a young man tucked away back there. We get our friend there, the mic.
What age were you when you discovered your interest in animals?
I can't remember a time when I wasn't interested in animals, and I would think that almost everybody in the room would say the same. Every kid at the age of 4 is fascinated to turn over a stone, he sees a slug, and he thinks, how fantastic, how's it moving, what are those little things at the front, has it got eyes on the end of it, what's it eat? Kids are fascinated with the natural world, and it can be that as they grow up, so they see more things, including all the stuff that's in the store, and get fascinated. But if they actually lose the interest in the natural world, they've lost one of the most precious things they have. And people don't. I mean, the story of natural history broadcasting is the discovery, which may have been the program makers or the program controllers may have forgotten that, or not believed that the public at large loved natural history, but the public at large haven't forgotten. They love them. And the programs that we put out on television, they were... Back in the 50s, they were quite revolutionary, really. There weren't many broadcasting organisations, apart from the BBC, that were showing natural history and taking it seriously. Now, everybody does, but then they didn't. And there will always be an audience for natural history. And there will always be people who haven't actually seen a lion catch a wildebeest. So natural history programming has a big future, just as it has a great past.
Right, we have time for only 2 more questions, so... Young man here, number 1, make it a good one. There's a mic just coming.
What would you say was your favourite filming experience?
My favourite?
Filming experience.
Filming experience? Oh, I would think it's probably watching Birds of Paradise display in New Guinea. Yeah.
What about the favourite country to explore, apart from Australia, obviously? But is there one country that you try and persuade people to make films about?
I'm very sorry I've not been to the heart of the Gobi Desert. There's not a lot there. That's the reason I haven't been there. And you can't get the BBC to send you make a natural history film on animals to places where there's hardly any animals. So it's quite tricky. So I've never been there, but I wish I had.
Right, last question over here somewhere. There's a gentleman in next to the camera over there.
Hi, David.
Hi.
My question is about the future of programme making, really, and I just wonder whether you worry that if CGI keeps getting better, that programme makers might eventually think we don't need to send people gallivanting around the world, and future David Attenboroughs might be stood in front of a green screen rather than doing the sort of things that you've done for the last many years.
The question you ask is a very, very real and important one. I don't think, I mean, the CGI is quite expensive, let's get that straight. So that if it's cheaper to go out and film a dormouse in the countryside than getting a CGI one, it is cheaper. But nonetheless, there's a profound truth and danger in what you're asking, because you can make things do things just because you think you're wanting to be honest, and you think if only that thing just wiggled its tail a different way, it would be very exciting. And you can make it do it. And there are classic examples of filmmakers who tried to make their subjects do what they thought they should do because they are being the truth. Now, you can do that with CGI more convincingly than ever before. And it could well be that the only reason for having a kind of nature jockey like me is that people will actually accept that if this character that they've got to know over the years says it's so, it is so, and he's not telling the truth, which is why that he really is telling the truth. And that's one of the reasons why I cherish that confidence, and why I'm very anxious that when you make a film like the animals in the zoo in the Natural History Museum coming to life, you make it absolutely clear what it is you're doing and what is real and what is not real. But your question is a very good one. If unscrupulous people could make the most sensational natural history film you ever saw in your lives, and they can make it so that things happen that never could possibly happen in the world, that's a danger.
It's thrilling to hear that you've got no intention of retiring, because no one here will let you. On behalf of everybody here, thank you very much to both of you for coming down. Mr. David Attenborough and Anthony Geffen. I think we've got a clip of a dodo here that we can show.
Well, I'll let you into a secret, actually.
Don't tell them.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed to me that on the pterosaur film, that we reached that the CGI animations they produced was a new level. I mean, the animals are totally believable. They behaved in a way which was both natural and, as it were, unpredictable. I mean, so you really felt they're real things. And there's a team which Anthony's outfit have within Atlantic Productions, Colossus Productions, called Zoo. And I would go and I see all these people beavering away at computers, working out what these things should be. And I started talking to the boss man, who was a very, very quiet and reserved man. I kept saying, very good, wonderful. And he was saying, oh, thank you very much, thank you very much. And eventually, after we've been working together for some months, only then did I discover from him that actually he was a fossil expert. He went to university, he studied zoology, and he studied fossils, and his heart was absolutely in it. And that's why that's those things. His name is James Prosser. He'd hate me for telling you that, because he's the modest-most man in the business. But he is fantastic. He's a near genius.
But it sounds like you work with a huge cast of people.
On the right twit. Let's be honest. I mean, you really do, because you're supposed to be reacting something isn't there. I mean, it's bad enough. I mean, I wouldn't mind doing the acting bit of glorious Hollywood beauty. I can see myself doing that.
Have a word with Sky next time.
But doing it with a dinosaur is difficult. And also, you don't actually have anything there at all. But what you do have is a man with a long pole and a red ball on the end of it. And the red ball is supposed to be the head of this thing you're looking at. So he wanders around being instructed as to where to go. And I had to sort of look there and say, all that stuff. And as I say, I looked a real twit. Not quite, a little bit less of a twit when they finally put the CGI in and you saw the animal. But at the time, it's not my game, really.
Anthony, how much of a twit do you think he looked?
I think Debbie was actually fantastic. I mean, to be the only person literally in the film, and to have to keep coming out and doing takes into air, often there wasn't even a puppet or there wasn't any eyeline. It's pretty hard, actually, over and over again. And we had spent hours setting up that shot, so David knew he had to get it done quickly. I think it's pretty hard, actually. And there's a fine line when you're acting into nothing, as we found out, getting it right. And I think the film is testament to that. And not only that, the critics have loved it. So
I tell you what, one of the, because 3D is quite a lengthy business. And he also said the Natural History Museum was very keen to do something which could lead to an app and varied apps to gather in new audiences for their museum. And we came up with this idea of, I mean, not a very original idea, but an idea that at night on Christmas, close to Christmas, you know, all these things would come alive. And that's how it happened. But it meant, I mean, it's quite tedious filming. I mean, the only time when you can really film in the Natural History Museum in the public galleries, of course, is when the museum is shut. So it meant that I wrote the script quite quickly because it's a very easy script to write, really. But it meant that once we got the script approved, we had to go and shoot all the bits that I'm appearing in the museum bits, within 15 days, but you had to do it every night. I mean, we got there at 7 o'clock in the evening, and we had breakfast at about 11 o'clock, and lunch at about 2 o'clock in the morning, and left at 7 o'clock in the morning to go home to bed.
I love you still call it breakfast at 7 o'clock in the evening.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, there can't be many things that you do for the first time in your career after the illustrious career you've had, but in this film, as we saw a clip there, you did a bit of acting. How was that?
Yeah, well, I mean...
he was quite good, wasn't he?
Well, I tell you, I mean, as a matter of fact, you feel problems it really was for me is that, okay, viewers, I spend my lifetime looking at animals, and if I said it happened, people thought it was true. They could believe me. And it was true. I mean, if I see a polar bear, I see a polar bear. So there's no acting in that. And I was very keen that people should see in natural history programs that I wasn't an actor. So how are you going to mix it suddenly with CGIs, with things that aren't there? And that was one of the reasons why a year ago, when we made a thing about pterosaurs, we deliberately left the skeletons in, the skeletons which moved around, so that people knew that, you know, the whole thing was a clever gimmick, really, but a gimmick with a reason. But so that once they understand and they became party to the agreement that, okay, this is got a game in it, we kind of pretend, then you're okay. But that was quite an important thing to do. And actually, the paradox is that the skeletons moving and animated, is particularly exciting. I mean, it really is a very interesting thing to see, almost more interesting looking at the animal itself. I mean, because you see the way the joints move and so on. So it's quite thrilling, and we've kept it and we exploited it quite a lot in this film.
And what amazed me was that, I mean, we've all seen CGI. We started with before Jurassic Park, but we've seen the progression of it. The level of detail. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Sir David Attenborough and Anthony Geffen. Hello.
Hi.
Hello down there. Thank you, Mother. Now, David, I know you've been a huge fan of the Natural History Museum for an awfully long time. Can you tell us a little bit about how this collaboration with them came about and a little bit about your love for that particular museum?
Well, we've been working, I mean, it's perfectly true, as a kid, and I dare say lots of people here, went to the Natural History Museum, and it was a place of wonders. I mean, you suddenly saw the skeleton of a dinosaur. Thrilling. And not only that, but you also saw tens of thousands of wonderful butterflies and birds and so on. So it was a great thrill. And we've worked a bit with the Natural History Museum for 3D, because the first 3D thing we did was about pterosaurs, pterodactyls, flying reptiles. And we are sort of good pals with the Natural History Museum. And then last January, just about a year ago, less than a year ago, the boss of Sky was very pleased with the flying reptiles that we did a year ago, and he said, I want another one for this Christmas. He left it a bit late, if you actually ask him.